All right, let's just jump right into this explainer. Today, we're dissecting a truly fascinating corporate drama, one where the human resources department itself, the very people who write the rules, suddenly becomes the subject of a massive investigation. We're looking at a deeply compelling source narrative here. It's basically a masterclass in office politics, systemic cover-ups, and honestly, what happens when the guardians of company culture are accused of completely manipulating it. Now, if you've spent any amount of time in a corporate environment, I guarantee the dynamics we're about to unpack are going to feel incredibly, almost uncomfortably familiar to you.
So we're kicking off our analysis with this incredibly powerful observation that perfectly sets the stage for a workplace where trust, it's entirely broken. The source material paints this incredibly vivid picture of an ordinary morning that just feels off. You know the vibe. The lights are soft, the keyboards are clicking quietly, but underneath all that, an anonymous complaint has just dropped like a bomb, and it's accusing HR of protecting senior leaders. Maya Bennett, one of the central figures here, perfectly captures that highly specific flavor of corporate dread. It's that awful tension of just waiting for the other shoe to drop in an office that has already been through a major scandal. It's like walking on eggshells, but everyone's pretending they're not.
Which brings us to part one, the illusion of peace and deflection. Because, well, when an established system is threatened, its first reflex is rarely to look inward. No, it almost always points outward.
And this isn't just some minor grievance about the coffee machine. This anonymous complaint points the finger directly at the HR department's handling of top executives. And this puts Olivia Park, an HR partner, in a completely unprecedented, incredibly awkward position. See, normally, Olivia is the one documenting other people's conflicts, right? She handles the infractions. But now, she suddenly finds herself having to investigate the very system she helped build. The source material highlights this irony so brilliantly. Literally, the watcher is suddenly the one being watched. It's a complete inversion of the normal power dynamic.
And honestly, it's absolutely fascinating to watch how toxic systems deflect blame. Because when the pressure starts mounting, manager Rebecca Sloan does what so many bad actors do. She uses this perfectly rehearsed, icy corporate calm to subtly point the finger right at a familiar suspect, Maya. Now pay attention to what she does here, because it's sneaky. She doesn't yell, she doesn't make a direct accusation, she just calmly suggests that Maya is the real problem here. Why? Because she knows that offices almost always prefer a familiar scapegoat over a really uncomfortable truth. It is pure deflection, completely masquerading as helpful insight.
All right, let's move into part two, weaponizing the process. Because this is exactly where we move from seeing a single isolated incident to recognizing a highly calculated strategy.
According to the source, the playbook these manipulators are using completely mirrors a previous crisis the company endured, something they called the 11:59 p.m. file scandal. And it shows us, step by step, exactly how bad actors weaponize totally normal corporate procedures just to survive. It's a classic three-step routine. Step 1. Create confusion. Flood the zone with noise so no one knows what the actual facts are. Step 2. Blame the principal person, in this case Maya, who has the nerve to ask the hard questions. And step 3, argue that, hey, for the sake of company morale, everyone should just drop the whole issue and move forward. It is a highly effective and deeply, deeply manipulative tactic.
But here's the thing. Maya refuses to give in to the anger that her detractors are desperately hoping to provoke. Instead of getting defensive and falling into their trap, she zooms out. She looks at the broader picture. She realizes that recognizing this recurring behavioral pattern is literally the only way to fight it. Because, look, a clean mistake, that's one thing. Accidents happen. But a clean, perfectly executed pattern, that implies intent. That implies a system specifically designed and maintained to protect bad behavior.
So that leads us into part 3, following the digital trail. The crucial point now is figuring out how to actually prove this pattern exists, which brings us to the hard data. Because emotion and accusations, they aren't going to win this battle. Only undeniable evidence will.
So, Maya teams up with this IT specialist, Noah Grant, and they start digging, and they begin looking at all the tiny details that just refuse to behave. We're talking timestamp anomalies, missing system notifications, even something as small as the wrong font being used in memo headers. Just these dull, gray rows of IT logs that suddenly hold all the secrets. Now, Noah has been warned not to overcomplicate things, which is classic corporate speak for look the other way, but he and Maya understand something critical. Human memories can be manipulated. Human loyalties can easily be bought. But digital logs, sometimes they are the absolute only honest witness left in the room.
But interestingly enough, the digital trail is really only part of the story here.
The definitive, undeniable proof actually comes from a quiet ally, specifically a former HR coordinator who had the foresight to save exit interview documents from pushed-out employees right before leaving the company. These notes provide the absolute sharpest receipts, and the source material makes a really profound point right here. This current complaint wasn't just about some new random incident. No, it was a test. It was an anonymous employee deliberately testing whether the company had actually changed its ways since the last massive scandal, or if the old guard was still safely entrenched in power.
Which takes us to part 4, tone versus the truth. And this is exactly what happens when the people in power suddenly realize the data is stacked completely against them. I mean, have you ever been in a meeting where the person holding the actual proof is put on trial for their attitude? It's infuriating, right? Rebecca tries to pull this exact move. She brings out a heavily rehearsed narrative, scheduling this whole culture alignment huddle, and she starts weaponizing all this HR corporate speak, saying things like, "Trust requires accountability." All the while, the factual reality is sitting right there in front of everyone. Hard IT logs and data exports. Rebecca is deliberately trying to shift the battlefield. She wants to move the fight away from the concrete evidence and onto the highly subjective, slippery ground of office etiquette. And that brings us to this standout observation from Maya. Rebecca is attempting to completely control the narrative by shifting the focus from the hard evidence to how people sound. She's essentially asking the room to evaluate who is easier to punish rather than evaluating who's objectively right. It's the oldest strategy in the book. If you can't defeat the message, attack the messenger's delivery. Tone policing at its absolute finest.
But then Daniel Reed breaks the cycle of silence. He literally closes his laptop, stands up, and says what everyone else in the room is thinking, but is just too terrified to vocalize. He shuts down the tone policing immediately. Now, the source notes that this isn't some loud, chest-thumping, cinematic heroism. It's not a movie. Instead, it's this principled, quiet courage that instantly makes the cowardice of everyone else in the office completely visible. He forces the entire room to look at the facts and stop hiding behind feelings.
So, part 5, uncovering the pattern. Let's dive right into the exact moment the entire cover-up unravels in the conference room, because this is where all that hard data and that sudden spark of courage finally intersect.
Noah and Maya put a timeline up on the conference screen, mapping out all the archived incidents side by side, and they successfully connect the dots from the past 11:59 p.m. file scandal all the way to the current crisis. The evidence is just undeniable. They identify the exact same timing, the exact same senior approval chains, and, this is the kicker, the exact same cleanup language in the emails, words like contain, stabilize, reset. By laying it all out visually like this, they prove definitively that this isn't just some big misunderstanding. No, it is a meticulously repeated, highly calculated method.
And right as the tension peaks in that room, CEO Claire Morgan enters. She looks at the data, takes it all in, and cuts right through the noise with one single, undeniable question. Who benefited from every version of confusion? She doesn't ask for a summary of the arguments. She doesn't want to hear about tone. She goes straight for the motive. And the answer, of course, is the senior leaders standing right there in the room who have been desperately trying to protect the very system that protects them.
Which brings us to part 6, leadership draws the line. Now, this is really interesting because it's where we transition from an emotional office drama to actionable ethical leadership. Because knowing the truth is one thing, but actually acting on it, that's entirely different.
During the ensuing confrontation, which happens right there behind the glass walls, HR's Olivia Park delivers an absolute fatal blow to the argument that simply following the rules is enough. The bad actors, they were arguing that they followed all the proper procedures. But Olivia realizes something crucial here. A procedure designed by corrupt people is only ever going to yield corrupt results. Without underlying integrity, merely following the rules is just an empty dance. It's just choreography. So, CEO Claire Morgan steps up, and instead of giving some fluffy, feel-good motivational speech, she changes the operational rules immediately. She dismantles the toxic system right then and there. She orders an independent review. She freezes the disputed decisions. She actively protects the employees who brought the evidence forward, and she yanks system access from the accounts tied to the pattern. This right here is what real accountability looks like. It is structural change, not just a bunch of empty apologies.
Claire then names the deeper, systemic rot within the organization. She warns that waiting for permission to tell the truth is a company's true downfall. And this is such a vital point. A toxic workplace isn't just built by the people doing the bad things. It is sustained by the good people who stay quiet, because the culture has taught them that silence is safer than honesty. And that leads us to our final section, the cost of silence. The events we've unpacked in this explainer really highlight the ultimate, devastating cost of just looking the other way.
We close with this absolutely defining realization from Olivia as she's sitting there drafting a revised policy late at night. Neutrality is not silence. Sometimes staying quiet actually means taking the side of the oppressor. So, as we wrap up this explainer on the anatomy of a corporate crisis, I want to leave you with a pretty big question to consider about your own environment, whether you're in an office or anywhere else. In your workplace, is your procedure a shield for the people, or is it just a shield for the power?